All right, Survivor Series is tonight, 2017. I just want to share some Survivor Series memories. Just before I get into the memories, I think it's the 31st Survivor Series tonight. Started in 1987. Survivor Series was the second of the annual pay-per-views after WrestleMania. Yes, that's true. Survivor Series came before the first SummerSlam by about 9 months, and actually well over a year before the Royal Rumble was a pay-per-view. The Royal Rumble started in 1988, but it was a free show on the USA Network the first year. It wasn't until January of '89 that Big John Studd won the second Royal Rumble that was on pay-per-view. So in the fucking tradition of the WWF, we can say the Survivor Series really is something that has a great legacy to it. Now, that being said, as an NWA fan at the time, WCW later on, yeah, there's some hard feelings on my end towards the Survivor Series, and I don't really carry this grudge around with me, but any NWA fan who doesn't tip of the hat to fucking Starrcade, and before that the Thanksgiving night tradition in the Greensboro Coliseum, if you're not man enough or woman enough to do that before you get into the Survivor Series, you're not worth your salt, okay? Because the WWF saw what the NWA was doing with Thanksgiving night wrestling, and they copped it. So let's acknowledge that. Let's not be afraid of that acknowledgement, okay? It's on the record. We all know it. That being said, Survivor Series, memories. The first one was a great one. It really felt like the first Survivor Series were really like all-star games. That's how I've best rationalized those early Survivor Series, because it was a different format. You didn't have these individual matches or title matches or tag team matches or even grudge matches per se. Sometimes there was grudges within the teams of survivors, feuding teams. But it really was an all-star game, and if you look at that Survivor Series, the first couple of years, like an all-star game, was a lot of fun. Once, I believe, was in 1991 that they first started adding singles matches to the shows, and I believe the first one was Hogan and The Undertaker, the well-established, haunting, but that title change that led to the Tuesday in Texas. That was really quite historic. So I think when we had that situation, then we started changing the game a little bit when it came to Survivor Series. I don't know if I want to say for the better or for the worse, but for the different. I kind of liked it when it was just an all-star game type of atmosphere. But look, they needed to push that storyline, or they felt the need to get Undertaker into the title mix so that you didn't have Flair versus Hogan. I've done my Flair-Hogan video where I talked about that famous match. But it did change things. 1992, I didn't see that one live at the time. That was the Shawn Brett one. Then we really started getting into some weird places. I think for a lot of fans, like myself, no offense to Brett, no offense to Shawn, but going from Undertaker and Hogan a year before, and ending up somehow with these guys that really did seem, I'm not putting them down because Shawn and Brett proved to be great in their own right. Obviously, I know that. Two of the greatest technical performers of all time, etc. Great drama with those guys, Shawn and Brett. But in 1992, if you were a fan and you saw that match as kind of the main event, you're kind of like, It just seemed like there was a cosmic change. You went from these 300-pound guys, Hogan and The Undertaker, to Shawn and Brett, and you felt like everything just kind of came down a notch as far as scope, okay? And that's not an insult, that's just how I felt. The rest of the card, I think, had Undertaker versus Kamala and other just goofy matches. I think there was one, 4-team Survivor Series match, which was not the best. Then they had that big Ultimate Maniacs against, Warrior and Savage versus, but Warrior didn't show up, so they had Kurt Hennig, turned face and teamed up with the Macho Man against Ramon and Flair. Just the 92 Survivor, to me, was just kind of all over the place. Going back to 93, I think they try to do back to more traditional matches. I believe that's the one that was in Boston Garden. They brought in the Rock and Roll Express versus, I guess, the Heavenly Bodies, which it didn't make much sense to have that match in Boston, but they tried. You know, whenever traditionally, whenever the WWF tries to do things to supposedly honor the NWA or the tradition of other promotions or Southern wrestling, they always fuck it up. And it seems like they fuck it up on purpose just to mock it. Like their Slumber League Wrestling or the Southern League Wrestling, whatever the fuck it is. I forgot the Gobbledygooker. I didn't talk about The Undertaker. We all know those stories. We'll just move on. Then the Survivor Series. A couple of years, 94, was not so great. It was like a big Shawn and Diesel had a little tiff. Okay. The Backlund Brett match was actually pretty good. I mean, really a way to tell an interesting story using Owen and Martha Hart and the throwing in the towel. That was pretty cool. Moving forward to 95. The 1995 Survivor Series I actually did like. I was not there in person, but I did go to that venue many times, the Capitol Center, which is no longer with us, the venue. What a way for that place to have their last kind of big hoorah was a world title change back when those didn't happen every week. And to give Diesel and fucking Bret Hart credit, that's a great match. And Kevin Nash has told me and told many people that was his greatest match, was losing the championship to Bret. And the 3 power bombs afterwards, it was either 1 or 2 power bombs, maybe 2. But that's a great match. Going through the table, I think it's documented that was the first time WWF put a guy through the table in 1995. Of course, they did it ad nauseum years after. Bret using the wire on Diesel's leg. Great match. The wild card match at Survivor Series 95, if you haven't seen that, I suggest it. It's got some really interesting... They kind of did a thing where they took babyface and heel and they just mixed them up randomly for no apparent reason. I'm drinking a probiotic drink. That was a nice Survivor Series, 95. I think Goldust was at that one, an early Goldust match. 96 was really, I believe, back in Madison. I'm going all by my head, by the way. I don't have any notes. 96, I believe, was Madison Square Garden. Bret versus Shawn. Sorry. Bret versus Steve Austin, okay? The match that really put the Austin-Bret match on the map. I believe it was their first televised singles match. They might have wrestled overseas or something. But it was a great match. Great finish. Great way to bring back Bret into the mix. And it was also, Steve was kind of stronger in defeat type of thing. Great match. I believe that was the night that Sid beat Shawn for the WWF title using the cameraman thing, which was exciting. Rocky Maivia came out of nowhere. That was his debut, I believe. Snuka, I think, came back. I think he had Furnace and LaFawn on the 96 Survivor Series. Okay, Montreal, the screw job. I don't even think I want to talk about this one too much, except to say it was historic. And maybe alternate world thought, if it means anything 20 years later, which it really doesn't. Why couldn't they have done a thing? If you notice that Survivor Series 97, I believe Undertaker was eligible to wrestle, meaning he didn't have an injury. He wasn't on the card. Why couldn't they have done this? Why couldn't they have just shot a segment where Shawn is in the backstage, he's been attacked, he's been brutalized by an unseen source, then Bret comes out to defend the title, and instead of Shawn coming out, The Undertaker comes out and beats Shawn, and beats Bret. So basically what I'm saying is, they could have feigned an injury to Shawn Michaels at 97 Survivor Series and had The Undertaker win the match and the title. And then had Undertaker lose to Shawn at the Royal Rumble, and then Shawn lose to Steve Austin at Mania, just as he did, and save all the bullshit. And then Bret could have gone off, and you wouldn't have the screw job. But I guess the screw job is part of the history of wrestling. That's just alternative world stuff. Still, 97 was definitely, really, I mean, if it wasn't already, which it was, Survivor Series 97 really gave this thing something special. Then we have the tournament in 98, I actually did like. That was like a break from the Survivor Series format, and I didn't have a problem with that. I thought it was a big, fun tournament. I was listening to some podcast fuck today saying there was Russo doing his best to be like WCW for the WWF that night. Maybe. They said there was a lot of boss man interference in that tournament. I don't really recall that a little bit. I remember The Rock beat the boss man in a few seconds, and then when The Rock kind of joined the corporation at the end, spoiler alert, sorry, hashtag whatever the fuck, I thought it was a good Survivor. I'm trying to remember what Survivor Series 99 was. I can't even remember, to be honest with you. I mean, was that... I don't really remember. I mean, I think moving forward, I think we get to 2001 is what I can remember it being, a 5-on-5 elimination, the invasion angle. That was a great match. It was an all-star match. You had The Rock on one side, Austin, RVD. Was Shane actually in that match? I don't remember, but that was great. Then you had, there was another Survivor around that time that I wanted to mention. It was at the Elimination Chamber in Madison Square Garden. Was that 2002 under the supposed Bischoff reign, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, someone was complaining about the Elimination Chamber, and I just pointed out, hey, look, Triple H could not breathe, okay, in the match. I think RVD or someone landed on his throat with a leg drop. I think it was either Booker T or RVD. I would probably say RVD because he was more reckless and was more likely to hurt people. I don't know if Booker T ever really hurt anyone. But I want to say RVD kind of dropped a leg on Triple H's windpipe, severely injuring him. And Triple H, to his credit, always a gutsy guy. I mean, look, everyone's got their issues with somebody. And I have issues with the WWE in general. But I'd say that, Triple H got it through. And I liked the first Elimination Chamber. It was something different, okay? With all the little pods. And they brought it back out for like SummerSlam 6 months later. Moving forward, I guess every fucking Survivor Series from there to there, it's just, they kind of blur after a while. I mean, you ask people of a certain age, you can remember things more vividly, things that you watched on videotape or you were a child when it happened, rather than stuff that happened last week. Just trying to remember, some of these fucking Survivor Series. I guess The Shield, okay, 2000, someone said it was 2012 when those guys came out for the first time. I was like, wow, was that long ago? Because I kind of remember it being 2013. I'd say with The Shield, that might have been like the really last big fucking thing. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I guess, okay, Goldberg and fucking Brock. That was last year's deal at this time, right? So Goldberg and fucking Brock, blah, blah, blah. And that was good. Not really. It was a good match, but it was just something that happened. So anyway, it's Mike Messier. Favorite Survivor Series moments. Once again, I gotta say that I'm just reaching a peaceful accord with the Survivor Series because it took over the Thanksgiving night tradition for Starrcade and everything. But I do kind of think that Flair one, when Flair helped, Flair won his Survivor Series match, and then he helped Undertaker beat Hogan. That was a big one. And also for me, I think the Gobbledygooker Undertaker. What I really liked about 1990 Survivor Series was how they did the teams thing. Like the winning good guys and the winning bad guys all had the final match of Survivor Series, which I thought was great. And I would like to see that again. For me, there's something about that was really cool. It kind of lends itself to that all-star thing. And even how Tito Santana got to be in the main event. So of all my Survivor Series picks, I'm going to say, oddly enough, 1990 is my favorite Survivor Series. Least favorite Survivor Series, 92. And I know that those are very close to each other. I'm trying to think of... the biggest screw job maybe is 91, that they didn't have Jake the Snake or Macho Man on the show, and they gave you a 3-on-3, Irwin R. Shyster, the Natural Disasters, versus the Road Warriors, and somebody else, Boss Man or something. Anyway, enjoy the Survivor Series tonight. Mike Messier.